Hello, and welcome to Slate Money Travel. I'm Felix Salmon of Axios. I'm here with Emily Peck of Axios.
Hello, hello.
I'm here with Elizabeth Spires of the New York Times.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about how much things cost these days. And specifically, because we are not actually boomers, we are going to talk about how much things cost in towns where there are a lot of tourists. And I have this theory, which I have been waiting to spring upon my interlocutors here, which is that if you are flying to a tourist destination, you are spending a lot on plane tickets, you are spending a lot on hotels. This is a large, expensive thing. You could spend, as we also heard in this series from Hilary Frey, like $5,000 just going to Disneyland for 4 days. So at that point, everything else kind of becomes a rounding error. And so an expensive meal, an expensive museum visit, something like that is just like, well, you know, I've spent all of this money now. It's an extra less than 1% on the total cost of the trip. It's the experience I'm coming for. If you're going all the way to Amsterdam, then it doesn't really matter how much you spend to go to the Rijksmuseum, because that's the whole point. And percentage-wise, it's nothing. Whereas if you live in Amsterdam, or if you live in New York and you want to go to a museum or see a Broadway show or something like that, then the price really matters. And so I feel like a lot of these towns that have a lot of tourists have one set of price-sensitive customers and one set of price-insensitive customers for the same experiential goods, whether it's restaurant meals or museum tickets or Broadway shows or whatever. And this seems to me to be a really difficult tension to deal with. And so, Elizabeth, have you, like, you're a New Yorker, do you ever think to yourself, this is dumb, I shouldn't be paying this much for this experience, I'm blaming the tourist?
I think the only scenario where I do that really is Broadway shows, because I also think because we're all in New York, we have a kind of distorted notion of how tourism affects cities, because our tourists are heavily contained in the Times Square area. Also, so they're not, you know, all over New York. And they have very specific things they want to do.
And New Yorkers are also just used to paying through the nose for everything already. Like,
that's true.
This is more of an issue in less wealthy cities, I think.
Well, also, I feel like there are tourist restaurants and there are, like, quote unquote, like, local restaurants, and there's tourist trap type restaurants where it's just everything is much more expensive and tourists are happy to pay it because maybe they don't know better, maybe that they're experiencing what you said, they've already spent the thousands of dollars and now they're like, whatever, $50 for a burger, I don't care. But typically locals don't go to those same places. But I thought what was interesting to think about from what you were saying and what you just said, like, there are some places where you both are going, like museums, Broadway shows, things like that. And it does seem like there should be, like, discounts for locals in those situations, which I believe in New York there are some discounts like that for some of the museums.
If you live in New York, you can get into the Metropolitan Museum for free.
Yeah.
But they'll give you a nasty look if you ask to do so, but you can. It's interesting. The question of tourist restaurants is an interesting one, because I feel like if you say the word tourist restaurant, everyone thinks of, like, the Olive Garden in Times Square. And no self-respecting New Yorker would ever go to the Olive Garden in Times Square. But also, there is a very deep and large pool of culinary tourists, right? And they want to tick off they want to go to 11 Madison Park, and they want to go to all of the other, like, hot restaurants of the minute that have just opened up. And they are, and especially when you're talking about anything with Michelin stars, I feel like Le Bernardin is actually a really good example, which is, it has a celebrity chef. It's right near Times Square. I think that they charge significantly more than maybe they could if it wasn't for tourists.
Yeah, the high-end culinary experience tourist trap, basically. It's like very fancy, very expensive, very famous, but still at the end of the day, it's like going to whatever, the 50s themed diner in Times Square.
Another thing is just the rise of food reality TV. I think there are a lot of sort of mid-tier chefs who have become national names because of shows like Top Chef and people are more educated about different culinary styles. And so I think it goes further than just the Michelin, very high end places. They come to New York, they will go see a chef that would otherwise be a little bit obscure that they only know about because now they're watching these people on YouTube and television.
Yeah, I remember
like
when Bobby Flay opened this huge restaurant on like Broadway in Houston around there, and you're like, how on earth does he fill this place up every night? And the answer is clearly tourists.
Yeah, which seems fine, but then does the price rise for all restaurants? Or maybe a better question is just like, if you are a tourist and you want to have a nice, authentic experience, whatever that means, when you go visit a city, how do you figure out exactly where to go? Maybe Felix has some tips because he travels a lot. Like, what do you do? Like, because if you just look online or you're like looking at your TikTok feed, you're just going to wind up at the very expensive place and buy the $20 donut, which we know how I feel about that.
So I think this is especially an issue in Mexico City and to a lesser extent in Tokyo, is that these are enormous cities with literally thousands of restaurants and literally thousands of really, really good restaurants. And there's some mechanism whereby all of the tourists wind up going to the same 25 restaurants. And everyone's like on the Googles going, what is the best restaurant in Mexico City? What is the best restaurant? And they always want to go to the best. Basically, like, partly for this exact reason, right? Which is, I spent so much money coming here. I only have so much vacation per year. I want to optimize and maximize the value that I'm getting from this trip. So I want the best, because especially in Mexico City, if you wind up spending $100 for a meal rather than $50 for a meal, that extra $50 is not important to you. You feel like if you got the best meal, that's really important to you. So everyone winds up converging on a handful of what become like very touristy gastro tourist traps. And all of the other amazing restaurants in the city are amazing restaurants that people don't really go to. And so one of the things I very much try to do when I'm traveling, especially in somewhere like Mexico City, is to try to avoid those restaurants, because these are great food towns and you can literally pick a restaurant at random and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I think there are two different kinds of tourists, though. There are people who travel and it's a kind of extraordinary experience because they only get maybe 2 weeks off a year. And then there's Felix, who travels a lot for fun, and you're an experienced traveler, so you know how to find those places. I think there are a lot of people who will, for instance, come to New York City and they think of it like, this is the only time I'm going to go to New York City, so I have to see the Statue of Liberty, I have to see Broadway show, whatever. They need to like check off the box. And I think that's probably most casual travelers, especially people who don't travel for work.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a rethinking of this notion of the best restaurant.
100%.
Because it's not just about the food. I had this experience. I don't travel a lot, full disclosure, but I recently came into Manhattan with my daughter and her friend. And
that counts.
That's traveling for you.
Yeah. And my daughter loves like Japanese and Korean and Chinese food. So I'm like, what's the best place we could go? Like, what's the ideal spot? I asked all these different people. I asked one of our colleagues at Axios, who's really good at recommendations. She gave me a list and I had the list and I was like, okay, girls, this is where we're going to go. It was like some dumpling place. And we walked all the way over this dumpling place. We got there, it was packed. And it was so packed that the three of us did not want to be there.
Right.
Like, who cares how good the dumplings are?
For real.
So we were like, they were like, we don't care. And I'm like, I don't care. We walked out. 2 doors down, there was like a great Korean restaurant. We sat down. It was Japanese. It was ramen. 2 doors down, great ramen place. Kind of empty, which is sometimes can be a warning sign, but it was kind of a weird time of day. Sat down, delicious meal, amazing service. Like, my daughter still talks about it. She's, remember that place we went? And I'm like, yeah. So that was the best place.
Exactly.
That was the best place.
And one of the things that has happened in the age of TikTok is that perfectly normal average places just blow up and suddenly have a line around the block for no reason. And you're like, and like places which, someone like me as a New Yorker who lives in Manhattan has been going to for years, suddenly I can't get into anymore because they've become TikTok famous. And I'm like, there is literally zero reason why this place should be TikTok famous, but it is. So I'm just going to have to go somewhere else. But I do think that what you experienced and what most tourists experience is just basically a level of insecurity. Like, I don't know this town. Yeah. I'm not a local. I want someone to hold my hand and tell me where to go. And the places where someone will tell you where to go is always going to be the same list of places. And so they are going to be crowded. And if you don't like the crowds, you just have to accept the discomfort of going somewhere where you don't have a prior recommendation, and it will probably be fine.
Accept the discomfort. That's so true.
I mean, but I have a family full of casual travelers that we were talking about, and I think part of the joy for them is to go to the same places that their friends went, so that when they come home, they can all compare notes. So I would agree with you. I would do exactly that. And I think there's a generational thing too. I think everyone I know who's a Gen Xer is kind of like, I don't want to go to the really popular place. I want the one that nobody knows about, that only I can have that exclusive
I have so
experience.
many Gen X friends who, like, if there's one place in the city with 2 Michelin stars and a famous chef, like, they're going to book that place months in advance, and they're going to be, we spent $600 a head to go to this amazing restaurant, and it was so worth it. It was amazing. And you have all of that sense of anticipation, and it's on the San Pellegrino list, and you get to tick off this thing and, get the 20-course tasting menu. And I would rather, like, get kicked in the head by an ass. But, this is a thing that people do. But, if that's what you want, I am not going to cry for the locals who want to go to the 20-course tasting menu at the Michelin star, like, whatever. Like, those people I don't care about. I do care about just, like, the good local restaurant, which somehow, I mean, put it this way. I don't begrudge those restaurants the crowds. Sure. If they win the TikTok lottery and they get to have lots of crowds and become popular and make lots of money, like, being a restaurateur is not easy. So, like, all power to you.
I don't think some of them liked it. I might botch this example, but a few years ago there was, like, a review. I feel like it was like best hamburger in Philadelphia or something. Someone should fact check and call. But that review led to the masses showing up at this burger spot's, door, long lines, big crowds. Restaurant hated it. It was, like, too much, overwhelming.
Right.
They didn't want it. And I think the reviewer wound up apologizing or issuing some kind of apology or something, like, went out and said, I kind of regret doing this to this poor restaurant.
But like, moving away from restaurants, like, how do we think about museums?
I think, I think there should be a discount for locals. For sure.
Do you think the Museum of Modern Art should have a discount for locals?
I should. That place is very expensive, and it's not right. Yes, I do. I think it should have a discount for locals. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And, like, basically all of them, the Frick and the Whitney, and, like, they're all private museums, but they should charge.
In theory, some of your taxpayer money is supporting these institutions.
Yes,
and,
there needs to be more, like,
ecosystem.
public spaces, and you should be able to benefit from them, even if you live in a big touristy spot. Especially if you do.
The way they do it, the way the discount for locals works in practice, is it's called membership. And you wind up paying more, but then you get to go return as many times as you like. And so you get to go there, like, 20 times a year if that's what you want.
No, that doesn't count. What do you think? I don't think that counts.
I don't think that counts.
It's adjacent, really. But not exactly.
I mean,
the
in
same.
theory, a lot of the New York museums say if you really can't afford to pay, like, it's a suggested donation.
No, I think that's just the Met. Like, the big private museums don't do that. The Met is a public museum, so it's different.
Yeah.
My local libraries actually you can go to the library and take out a pass to any of the New York City museums. That's, like, a benefit they have. There should be more of that.
The public museums are good. We like those.
The public library does that for all the different museums, I believe. My fancy
But it doesn't
Westchester.
do it for the MoMA. It doesn't do it for the Whitney.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah, they should absolutely have a discount for locals. I mean, the reason Museum of Modern Art can charge so much is because of all the tourists coming, right?
Correct.
So there should be some kind of arbitrage. They should raise the price for tourists a little more and then charge it to do that.
And this is actually very common in many of the countries that I visited, is there is, like, a different price for locals. And, I was just in Doha, and the median income in Doha is very low. It's a lot of, underpaid workers. And so if you live there and you want to go to the National Museum, you pay 25 cents or something. But if you're tourist, you pay $25. And that seems fine to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly how it should be. That's perfect.
So more of that.
Yeah. Oh, and less of, on the flip side, in reading, preparing to talk about this important topic, I read a lot about like tourist cities charging like fees to travelers to sort of discourage them from coming. Venice, I think what I read was a €5 fee. That doesn't seem enough to discourage anything given what we're discussing.
Weirdly, okay, so this is crazy, okay? The whole premise of this conversation is that €5 is not going to dissuade the tourist from doing anything.
Yeah.
And yet, when Venice put in this fee, and to be clear, this is a fee on day trippers, basically. If you're staying in the city, if you're in a hotel in the city, there's probably a hotel tax or something like that. But what they were finding was that there were a bunch of people who were either on cruise ships or were staying in Verona or somewhere like that and would come in for the day and were contributing to the crowds, but weren't really contributing to the economy. They would bring like a packed lunch, And so they were like, we're just going to charge you €5. And weirdly, it had an effect. It actually reduced the number of tourists packing the Piazza San Marco.
Does it undermine your theory completely?
Well, I think maybe cruise ships are like a special animal because there are also cities that have limited the number of people on a cruise who can come or the number of cruise ships that can dock.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine even for the cruise companies, it would be a giant pain in the ass to have to deal with that $5 fee for every
I feel like
person
the
on
cruise
ship.
companies can deal with the $5 fee. I don't think but yeah, it does seem to have worked, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised how much of an effect a $9 congestion charge had on traffic in Manhattan. These things are things that you think people would be willing to pay, and when you introduce them, people are like, like how? Like seriously, why? Like Venice is just such an amazing city. You're really not going to go there because it's going to cost you $5.
But maybe it's the most price sensitive day tripper people who is like, we could go somewhere else for the day. It's not like they're planning a whole
Well,
event.
also the day trippers, I would imagine, are like, oh, we've been to visit Venice a million times. Like, do we maybe we should go somewhere else?
Yeah, we already have our lunch packed. Yeah. Just go somewhere else.
Take
It's
the
going to
train
be
somewhere
full
else.
of the other tourists.
The weird thing is that there is a lot of price sensitivity among tourists precisely because they're spending so much money for the planes and the hotels and stuff. They're like, shit, now I have no money left. But by the same token, someone's spending $900 on tickets to Othello.
Lots of people have a lot of money right now, even as we worry about recession.
I can't stop thinking about the Australian tourists who are buying tickets to some Broadway play who I saw quoted. And it made so much sense. They were spending $2,000 on like dinner on a movie, basically, or dinner on a play. And you're like, they're like, oh yeah, we flew here from Sydney and we flew business class. So at that point, that's like, between the two of them, that's like $30,000 or something. At that point, nothing matters. Just compared to the flights, like the hotel, even the $1,000 a night for the hotel doesn't really mean anything.
I also think if people come into a city knowing that it's going to be expensive and they're prepared to spend money, their entire mindset changes. They're suddenly, the Arrested Development character is like, what's it cost? What's a banana cost, Michael? $12? It's they just completely recalibrate what they're willing to pay for stuff because they assume that they're just in a totally different environment.
Or you do travel math, which I learned this on TikTok, which is you go and you stay in a hotel and it's not all inclusive, but you just charge it to the room and you don't think about it. You don't worry about it. So money doesn't matter anymore. You're like, this meal, it's free. It's on the hotel. No, you're charging it to the room, but it doesn't feel like anything because you haven't taken out a credit card or put down
a temporary
cash.
hold on my card for this
There
money.
there is no greater ripoff than the hotel breakfast.
But it's so nice.
Sometimes it's nice.
You get that pot of coffee, the silver pot. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. And the fruit looks so beautiful.
The
How do
one
you
thing
not like that?
The one thing I will say is there is nothing more expensive than a free luxury hotel room. Someone's like, we'll give you this hotel room for free. And then all you need to do is pay your incidentals. And those incidentals will cost more than, like a perfectly nice hotel room somewhere else.
But like emotionally and mentally, it's okay. You still got a free room, right? So what if you had to spend $40 for that pot of coffee? It's delightful and you can have it in the bed and you don't care if you spill on the bed. And it's wonderful.
There you go. Make sure you get a $40 pot of coffee.
Or whatever
it's
it costs.
Totally worth it.
How much does a pot of coffee cost?
They really can. They really can. Okay, so where have we wound up with this? Like, we just want maximal amounts of price discrimination against tourists.
Yeah, what's the algorithmic pricing? That thing Wendy's was going to do a while back. Remember we talked about it, where they're going to charge different. Yeah, just charge
time
different
of day or whatever.
time of day. And I think
Whether you're
companies
using an
are
iPhone.
secretly moving in this direction already. They're charging different people different amounts based on what they can afford, sort of, or what they can be milked for, I guess is the more cynical way of looking at it. So I think I'm in favor of that.
And do you think we can make it work on Broadway somehow? I want Broadway tickets to come down because I really love Broadway right now.
Oh, I was going to ask you though, are we peak this conversation? Because tourism now, it seems, well, at least tourism to the United States is dropping
plunging,
off. So maybe ticket prices will come down.
Maybe this is the silver lining to the Trump immigration restrictions and no one wanting to come to America anymore, is that I'll be able to go to the opera and not spend $500.
Yeah, there you go.
Brilliant.
Way to spin it.
Way to stick it to the liberals of New York City.
We get cheap opera tickets. Yay. Okay, I think that's it for Slate Money Travel. Thanks very much to Elizabeth and Emily. And thanks very much as well to Cheyna Roth and Merritt Jacob and Jasmine Molly and Hilary Fry and the cast of thousands who put this together. And we'll be back next week with more Slate Money.